Hi, my name is Craig. I'm new to the Catholic Church, and I'd like to tell you how I got here. I was baptized and confirmed into the Lutheran faith, and I learned of God's law there. At that time, I felt the law was proper and fair. But as I grew, many temptations of the world interrupted my thinking. I went into law enforcement, and I felt like I was the law, so I chose my self-law and adapted my plan with not much regard for God's law at that time. I felt I was basically a good person, so bending and fitting the law to fit my plan was better than the starvation diet that I viewed it as. As a result, I suffered many pitfalls in my life, to include the loss of my job, 3 failed marriages, and a complete loss of self-respect for myself. I was still unaware of why all these things were happening, and I grew angry with God and the rest of the world, basically. I got to where I felt completely out of control. And in this state, the fact that I could no longer control anything made me despondent, filled with despair. So I chose to go to a place where my dad always took us camping as kids, a remote wooded area. And I decided I was going to end my suffering. I was a veteran and a police officer, and I'm an avid hunter, so I'm well versed in the methods of efficient killing. I sat in the dark on a bench, and I was prepared, when suddenly a loud voice stated very clearly, and I remember the words, "Stand up." I was very startled, and I immediately stood and holstered, which is like opposite of any training that I had had ever. And I think it was out of embarrassment. I began looking around, looking for the source of the voice, and I didn't see anyone anywhere near me. And at that time, a rush of thoughts came into my head that I'd never thought about before. And one that struck me most was to go home and make a rosary. And I didn't really know what a rosary was. I had friends in school that I saw a few, but didn't know what it was. So I went home and I read about them, and I went on the internet and I found pictures of them, and I made rosaries of all shapes and colors. And then I called a priest that a friend recommended to me. That priest was very comforting, and he asked me to attend RCIA class. I didn't know what that was. So I said I needed to meet with him to see if I was eligible even to be Catholic. And he cordially agreed to meet with me. At that meeting, the words, "You are too big of a sinner, so leave the church immediately," never came out, of course. I went home still bewildered and learned how and began praying on the rosaries that I had made. And I now know why Padre Pio says, "Hand me my weapon," when he did. I felt the urge to look for reasons not to enter the church, though. And believe me, I found a lot of problems that the church has outside and inside it, but I found one reason that convinced me. And it was that Jesus Christ, the Son of God himself, established the first church, which is the Catholic Church. So I embarked on this journey. I know that God indicated to me that a personal relationship with him was needed, because God began that relationship on that chilly night in the woods. And actually, that's not true. He began it a long time before. I just never noticed. Through prayer and worship, God's instructions flowed into me, and our relationship has blossomed. This personal relationship with God gave me a true understanding and love of God's law. Through that love of God's law, a firm trust in holy will was evolved. I know that the amount of trust in God's will is directly commensurate with the peace encountered in everyday life. In closing, I want to share a thought that I heard from my studies. A law grounded in God is true and just. A law grounded in itself is merely suggestion. Suggestion is not always true. I'm so happy to be joining my family in Christ this Easter after 63 years of life. I am truly alive and on fire for the Lord. I hope you catch fire.